Let's take a look at the security service for securing our accounts within our AWS account, and that's specifically identity and access management. As a best practice, every AWS account, should be using IAM users and groups to control access to resources. Now, as we know, there's also a master account called the root account. And the root account is going to be used for a very small number of services. For example, maybe you want to set up account billing. Maybe you want to sign up for GovCloud. Maybe you want to change the AWS support plan. There's a number of things the root account does that wouldn't be considered a daily administrative task. Within identity and access management, there's also a large number of features to help you manage and secure your AWS account as a whole. So using identity and access management, we create IAM users for day-to-day administrative tasks. As a best practice, we should use MFA, that's multi-factor authentication, which can be enabled on every identity and access management account to give an additional layer of security, something you have and something you know. So something you have being the password that's assigned to that account, and something you know could be a security code that you have to enter along with your password to get access to your resources. And it probably makes sense by now to limit the use of the root user account to specific tasks that the root account has to carry out. There's a number of security tools built into the IAM security service that allow you to control and enhance the level of security for your AWS account. First up, we have account settings, which is kind of a funny name for a password policy, but that's what they call it. And we can go and define the level of complexity of our passwords for all IAM users. We can also use a service called the Access Advisor. The Access Advisor advises you as to what the IAM user account has actually carried out after it's been created. What services has it actually accessed? What were the access times? So if you're doing some auditing as to the level of security within your AWS account, you can quickly get a good idea as to whether accounts have been active and whether those accounts maybe shouldn't be carrying out the tasks that they've been carrying out. If you want to have a bigger picture of what's going on within your account, you can use the credential report. And this will give you a listing of all of the account users within your account, the status of their credentials, when their actual security keys have been changed. They give you a lot of details in a spreadsheet that you can download and analyze. We also have the Policy Advisor, and this is a tool that allows you to test your current security settings and future security settings. When we're talking security with identity and access management, we're talking about creating policies, and these policies are levels of permissions which determine what you can and can't do. So the Policy Advisor allows you to test your policies that you've created and any new work you're considering carrying out. And as we know, multi-factor authentication allows us to have an additional code that we have to enter whenever the account is authenticating into your AWS account. So we can enable MFA for any user account, including the root user account. So if I want to control access to my AWS account, I use IAM to grant the user permissions, what that user can and can't do. I can control who can create, configure, and delete any resource in my AWS account. And I can do this down to a very granular level. Any activity can actually be logged to the monitoring service at AWS. The monitoring service is called CloudWatch, and it can log the access that's going on within my AWS account. And it can also alert me if there's any issues that I'm concerned about. And I get to define what should be alerted. When I log on to Identity and Access Management as an administrator, I will have a security status displayed. This is what we want to see. We want 5 green checkboxes. At the top, deleting my root access keys is telling me that the root account cannot run scripts. And this is very important because we don't want the root account to be running scripts, because remember, the root account can't be controlled. We also have MFA enabled on my root account. That's a great idea. So anybody that logs on using that root account will be challenged to enter a code. There's also individual IAM users within this account, which means that we're not using the root account for everything. We're also using groups to assign permissions, which is great. It's much easier to manage users by groups. And there's also a valid password policy that's applied. So we can get a quick view as to the level of security, i.e. the best practice of security that's been defined within this AWS account. Once I have IAM users and I've defined policies for those users, there's a number of services and a number of possibilities that you might want to do to control those users. We can use CloudTrail, which is the logging service for all API calls and for all authentications to a particular AWS account, to get exacting details as to who's logging on and what they're doing. Using CloudWatch billing alarms, I can define that I'd like to know when 50% of my budget has been spent. Maybe you'd like to know that to actually ensure that your budget is being followed. We can also enable AWS Config, another service within our AWS account, and set up rules to define an acceptable level of compliance. For example, you could say, anytime anybody creates a virtual hard drive, that drive must be encrypted. If a user logged on, specifically an IAM user logged on, and didn't encrypt the virtual hard drive, you could be notified. So some best practices for monitoring IAM users. We can integrate CloudTrail with CloudWatch, meaning that something that happens within our account that is logged in CloudTrail can alert you, because CloudTrail can be integrated with CloudWatch, the monitoring service, and you can find out when certain things happen within your account that you have a concern about. If you have somebody that authenticates to your account and can't remember their password or is having a problem logging on, you can use CloudWatch alarms to alert you that there's authentication problems. You could also be alerted whenever the root user logs on. Who knows? Perhaps that root user account, the credentials have been passed around to numerous users. So you want to be sure when the root account is logging on, it's a valid use of that account.